I'm a little bit early. Anybody want to talk about anything?
Ayana, what is your background? Is that like a mural behind you?
Yeah, I still haven't finished it. I had drawn out all these triangles and then I got too tiny, so I was like, I'm gonna pause.
It's so cool. I love it. I love what's coming together there.
It looks awesome.
Appreciate it. I'm deciding if I'm adding anything else or not, but I think I might leave it.
You're fine. You're fine. My aunt's gonna sit in and listen.
Awesome. Super happy to have your aunt. That's awesome.
Not just any aunt.
Yes, not just any aunt. She is favorite Aunt Amy, FAA.
I love it. She's claiming her stake.
Yes, she does. She just started her own business too. She's in HR.
Amazing. Congrats on that.
Okay, you have a different woodpecker thing or AI note taker?
Yeah, it gives you a transcript.
Have you used woodpecker? Like, have you know the difference, or have you only ever used the tactic?
I think I ran out of free ones with woodpecker, so I was trying this one.
Nice. All right. We'll give it like another minute or two while we wait for everyone to join. Anybody have anything exciting happen this week? No good news to share?
We got a tax return.
Woo!
Oh, yeah, that's great news.
That wasn't expected, so. Woo.
I might have found a first client, so.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
That's great.
Yay.
Thank you. And I'm really excited about to hear about this because they want to start with consulting, so I kind of want to be prepared for it.
Well, Amanda is a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hopefully you learn a lot today, and if you have questions, this is very interactive, so if you're not hearing what you want to hear, ask more questions. But I have a giant list to start from.
Yeah, we did get a lot of questions in advance, so we'll try to answer those first, and then if you guys want to use the hand button or just throw it in the chat, I'll try to keep track, and then I'll stop in each kind of section just in case we have questions about the topic we just talked about, and then we'll move on. All right. We're at 11, but I think we'll go ahead and get started since we do have so much to cover today. So, was there anyone here today that wasn't here last time we had Amanda? Okay, so let's do a brief intro for Amanda. I'll let you do that. I could do it, but I feel like you'd do better.
It's all good. I've got it memorized. So I'm Amanda Rango with ARD Fashion Consulting. I'm the founder and creative director. And I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary of my business. I was in corporate retail for about 20 years. So kind of grew up there, started, built, and ended my corporate career in kidswear. So I worked for companies like Limited Too, Justice, Genuine Kids for Target. I had a short stint in New York. And then came back. I'm Ohio-based, so I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And 3 years ago, decided to start my own business. It was very organic. I just started as a freelancer and had the opportunity to, land a project that required, other talent and essentially a little design team, satellite design team. So that was kind of the beginning of my business. And now in year 3, I have really had time to evaluate, who my target client is. And so I've really niched that down. So I work with fashion founders. So they're either launching a concept, collection, brand, or my other kind of set of clients are, they have kind of like a proof of concept, and they've been running their business for about 5 to 10 years. And they're typically in that like 1 million to 6 million revenue. And most of my clients know nothing about the industry. They don't have any formal training. They have just guts and passion, sometimes a little marketing background, skill set in other areas of business. But in order for that client to scale, they really need to look at, their softwares, their systems, their efficiencies, how they're doing things. And most of them are at a point where they're at the mercy of their manufacturers. They've never created a tech pack. They've never done a formal fit session. They're not quite sure how to actually source new fabrics and things. They've just kind of been rolling with one manufacturer for most of that time. So essentially I can come in with my team and build, an end-to-end product development and sourcing strategy from idea to product at their door. And typically I can get it for them at a better cost because I have an amazing sourcing partner that I do joint work with. She's out of New York right now. But this time next month, she'll be Texas based. She's actually moving to Texas. So she is my sourcing arm, and she has about 17 years experience in sourcing and manufacturing and supply chain. So she's like the second portion of my business. I'm more creative and service side. And then she essentially finds the right sourcing partners, manufacturers, and helps to, bring goods into the country, assure that she's, working with a great forwarder and getting it to the client's door. So that's me in a nutshell. And I don't know. Any questions about that before we jump into questions? Awesome.
For anyone who's interested in sourcing, I might try to have Mega come on in the future. Her sourcing partner, her name is Megna. I'm sorry. I know a Mega as well. Megna.
Oh, that's not confusing at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, Megna is amazing. And, similar to me, she was in a lot of corporate roles in her career and has also been on her own doing more of the sourcing side of fashion consulting. So she's an amazing partner. And, I think one of the biggest things that I've realized in the last 3 years is I don't want to do the things that I don't want to do. And I'd rather do the things that I'm really good at and that I also enjoy and have passion behind. And so, finding partners like Magna or my subcontractors are really what has made my business exciting and fun and still enjoyable. But it's taken time to get to that point because, as you probably all know, you wear many hats from the beginning. So it really gets fun when you have the opportunity.
Is that me or her? Is everyone still there? Oh, this is me. Shoot.
To lean on. Courtney, you're going in and out.
I know. I don't know what's happening.
It's all good. Well, as long as we stay live, we'll be fine.
Was everyone else fine? Did everyone else get that whole gist? I'm the only one that cut out? Wonderful. Okay.
Awesome. Well, should we just start jumping into questions?
Absolutely. So let's kick off. The topic here is how to get customers or find clients. So do you want to just talk to that, and then we could jump into some of the more minutia of the questions?
Yep. So to be perfectly honest, I would say for me personally and for my business, the best way that I have procured clients in the last 3 years has literally been a combination of networking. So word of mouth, really leaning on my current network. So for example, when I first started my business and I was kind of like, where the heck do I start? I sat down and I made a list of 300 people in my network that I had crossed paths with at some point in my 20-year corporate career. And I chose people that I knew and I trusted and that I knew were familiar with me, my working style, and trusted me. So people that would recommend me. And essentially, I just started going through that list like 10 at a time, 10 every week, and started reaching out to those people to really just let them know what I was doing. So, I would say, hey, like I've started a, freelance consultancy business, and here's what I do. Here's the type of clients that I am looking for, keep me in mind as you're networking, as you're meeting people. And if someone comes up, by all means, here's my information, share it with them. So that's honestly kind of where I started from ground zero. And that method was given to me by my husband, who has been in like some real tough sales for many years. And now he's a financial advisor. So the methods that he and his business use don't always work for my business. So that's something I've had to kind of, test and learn. But I will say some of my best clients are always my Justice connections. So I worked with Justice for a long time, and I'm talking some of them just come out of the woodwork. So as long as you've built, really great lasting relationships, you should just feel confident to call on those people and let them know what you're doing and just, be top of mind. And as you go through those 300 contacts, you'll start to niche down the ones that you think will be, have longevity as a networking partner. So in order for me to identify that, so a great networking partner for me is someone who comes to a networking meeting with people they want to introduce me to. So, hey, now that I kind of understand what you do, the services that you offer, and the clients that you are looking for, here's a couple of names of people that I think you could network with. So it's like a huge networking tree. And like, I just got a new client that I signed literally 2 weeks ago. And it was a lady that I worked with at Justice. We decided we hadn't spoken in 12 years. And she saw that I had this business. She came to me looking for a graphic designer. And it snowballed into like, we're in a 4-month contract. Like, I'm doing tons of like sourcing for her. We're doing packaging. I mean, it just snowballed, and it's all about the relationships. And I think one thing I've learned is plant your seeds, and you never know when they're going to grow, because there are some seeds that I planted 3 years ago that I thought were dead in the water. And they have started blooming and blossoming only because when I planted that seed, I was a nobody. And now after 3 years of sharing through my content pillars, through my social media, or launching a blog, or constantly networking, or educating people, I've had the opportunity to build their trust. So I feel like that's a great place to start. And then the other thing that I'll say is any sort of networking groups. So I actually belong to 3 networking groups, and they're all very different. 2 of them are local and 1 is national. So there's a group here in Columbus, Ohio called the C-Bus Retail Group. And they just do like local events for anybody in retail. And then they also have like a paid networking group, and I get on a call with there's 200 members. There's probably about 20 to 25 that show up each month. And we literally just talk about our businesses, where we're at, what we're doing, what we're excited about, what we need help with. And we just add value for one another. So that's a great support group for me. I also spend a lot of time with called the WSBA. It's a Women's Small Business Accelerator, and I think it's national, but I belong to the Columbus chapter. Again, it's just networking with other female entrepreneurs. So not necessarily anything to do with fashion, just another group of people that are, that I can learn from a business perspective. I actually took a course, a paid course that they provide called the Determined Entrepreneur. And it was more about foundations of business. So I learned a ton taking that course. And then the last one that I'm involved in, which some of you should probably check out, is called the Entreprenista League. So it is a group of, I think it's up to about 1,200 women and all female business owners, but national. So, for example, there's, members that hold office hours. So for 1 hour, we all get on, a call. And a couple weeks ago, there was an attorney that I got onto her office hours, and I learned all about trademark, copyright, IP. I actually just had a follow-up with her yesterday, and I think she's gonna file for my trademarks for, my consulting business and a course that I'm writing, and like perhaps even a brand that I'm launching, like just a wealth of knowledge. And I just joined, I think at the end of last year, and I actually have 2 clients from that group. So other, people who are starting brands or trying to, do a side hustle until they can leave their full times, and they need somebody to help. Yeah, so it's Entreprenista League. So you could just Google Entreprenista League, and they also have an Instagram page. I think they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook. I mean, they're everywhere. And I think they're doing enrollment soon, but they have, it's kind of like typical membership programs. Oh, perfect, Courtney. Thank you so much. Check them out. I will say I've been involved in a couple different groups over the last 3 years, some being like a 4-month program, some being a year program. The great thing about Entreprenista League is I think it's a really tangible price, and they have a lifetime membership. So it's a one-time payment. I can't remember exactly what it was, maybe like $2,400, $2,600, but I've paid $4,000 for a 4-month program, and I've paid $1,200 for a 1-year program. Like, it just depends on, what you're getting for what you're paying. So definitely find your networking groups. And then, of course, LinkedIn connections. Something I'm working on in my own business is when I get a LinkedIn connection, having immediate follow-up with that person and trying to, investigate ways that we could add value for one another, and being curious about that, and trying to get in contact with them and say, thanks for connecting. How can I add value for you? Do you want to pop on a quick meeting? Let's see if there's any connectivity, or if we're just, going to be connection friends. But really kind of working that network. And then some of the last things that I have actually added this year to my marketing strategy is podcasts. So being a podcast guest. I did one maybe 2 years ago. I would say it was like Podcast Lite. It was like my bookkeeping service, and they do podcasts on their clients. I actually just recorded a podcast about 2 weeks ago that'll be out in another week. And I kind of have a list of podcasts that I want to pitch. And essentially what I'm looking for is a creditable, podcast host. B, who are they speaking to? Because I want it to be my clients, like directly who I'm trying to pitch. So any podcast that has Fashion Founder in it, I'm constantly listening to their episodes and getting to know, their podcast, their business, and if that audience would be a great audience for me to tap into. So pitching, podcast hosts. And then the last thing that I've also been working on is boosting my SEO. by launching a blog. I actually hired an SEO expert at the end of last year who gave me a straight up schooling on the world of SEO. Like my head was spinning off. Thank God I have a part-time content manager that's much younger and smarter than I am with technology, to be able to, absorb that educational piece of SEO and how important that is, and how there's, free small little steps that you can take to boost your SEO, just by, registering your business on Google and asking people to give you, a great referral. Anybody that gives me a review or a referral, I ask them to do it on both LinkedIn and on my Google business page. I make the steps really easy. I say, would you be willing to write a review? Here's the link, invite them to do their recommendation on LinkedIn. And then I quickly send them the link where they can copy and paste that same thing onto my, my Google business profile. So all of those things are how I get customers.
All right.
And referrals. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask a happy client, hey, do you know, can you give me 2 or 3 names of other people that you think I could also add value for in the way that that we've been working together. My business thrives off of referrals, and, I think it's always good to ask. The worst they can say is no.
I think that's like one of the best things to remember in this entire field of freelancing is like the worst they're going to say is no. So
Yep.
You'll miss out on 100% of the chances that you don't take.
Yep.
Before we move on to the next topic, does anyone have questions about what Amanda said about how she looks for customers and is improving her visibility for her business?
How do you tackle everything? Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I will say I am in a very transitional part of my business. I think because I just hit year 3, what I'm realizing is for the last 3 years, I have been working in my business. So when I left corporate, I was at a director level. I hadn't made a tech pack or done a sketch for probably 5 or more years. And I was just managing people. But I kind of went back to basics when I launched my business. So it was me, myself, and I for, a while. I would hire a couple people to do, sketches, but I would do all the tech packs. I would do all the, everything. And now I feel like I'm at a point where in order to scale my business, I have to start relying on other people to help me get there. And the first thing that I take off my plate is anything I don't love doing. So I've always had either an intern or a part-time, social media person. So, she does social media and she lightly manages my LinkedIn profile, my Instagram page, and she helps me co-write my blog. She also is responsible for my list building, and when I'm ready for it, she will help me with my newsletter. So she now has very clear responsibilities. And then I just hired what I'm calling an executive operations / client journey specialist. So what I'm learning is anybody I hire in my business, who, by the way, is never full-time, super part-time, it's only as I need people so that I can just grow very slowly. But the idea is to take things off of my plate that are not revenue generating. So I hired this person. She's, executive operations. So she's actually helping with, we just got into Asana software. So she's helping me manage CRM. She's helping me manage all my contractors and my invoices. That's stuff that I have, client work that'll sit on my desk, like a strike off or a graphic or fabric review that should really be the priority. And I feel like I get stuck running payroll or, things of that nature. So it's really just about prioritizing for you what is revenue generating. And for my business, it's feeding into my funnel. So I have like 7 clients right now, but some of those, the contract's up next week. So I either got to upsell them to go to the next contract, or I got to go find another contract. So as long as I'm always feeding my funnel, I should have a healthy stream of business. But I will say I had a huge learning my first year. And there were a lot of pros that came from the learning experience. But one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten is fail fast and learn fast. And so I did that. My whole first year, I had a really nice corporate client, and it's essentially what helped me realize that I could be an agency, because the scope of work was launching a kids line that was 50 to 75 choices a season. And so I couldn't do that alone. So I hired a sketch artist, a designer, a tech designer, a graphic artist, a print designer, to basically bring it all together. But what happened is I did that for 40 hours a week, managing a massive team for 1 year. And in the blink of an eye, it was over. And so it was a huge learning experience for me, because I kind of knew in the back of my head, all my eggs were in one basket. So now I'm trying to better diversify my business by having, instead of one huge corporate client that could fall off the earth at any minute, I'm building relationships with clients who really need me to actually sustain their business. And it's smaller projects, it's smaller retainers, but when you have 7 or 10 of those, when one falls off, it's not a complete panic. It's like, oh, I just have to go and find X amount of dollars to replace this. And even if I don't do it for a month or 3 months, like, not going to go broke. I can still pay my bills. I just might not be able to get a manicure or buy that new, jacket that I want. So I would say, I don't even know what your question was at this point, but hopefully I answered it.
It's okay. Yeah. I think you answered it.
Okay.
I do want to add too, as far as like a smaller scale freelancer, very relatable to what Amanda said. Like, I realized early on when I first started freelancing that it was holding me back from getting jobs because I was so afraid to commit to doing an entire tech pack when I didn't have like grading and like POM, points of measure experience. Like, I know it because I've been in the industry for so long, but I didn't feel like I was an expert in that, and I strive for excellence. And so because I had that fear, I was like afraid to commit to clients that needed that whole package. And so I got great advice that was like, hire someone else to do it. Like, if that's the roadblock, hire somebody else who has that expertise and keep moving. And I did that. So I have clients that I provide full tech packs for, but I hire someone to do the grading and the POMs. I still check them and make sure that I understand and feel comfortable with what I'm giving to my client. But that prevents me from getting those clients and getting those jobs. I didn't say that quite right, but you guys know what I meant.
Totally.
Yeah,
great point.
So let's jump to, actually, because we're talking about this is a very cute and specific question, so I'm going to read it. I would love to know about your processes around project handoff and delegating tasks. I keep bottlenecking at me because I struggle getting ideas out of my head in a productive fashion and end up doing too much myself. When I do have a team that I can trust to do the work, help.
Oh my goodness. This is such a good question. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. I would say you really have to rely on other people for things. I mean, in year 3, I'm still struggling with this. But what I always challenge myself to think about is, with my hourly rate, does it make sense for me to go on Pantone Connect and build a palette? Or does it make sense to hire somebody at a quarter of my rate to go build a palette? Because my time is better served, and I'll probably say this 40 more times today, on revenue generating activity. And, you know, part of my mission as a brand and as a designer and as a leader is to teach other people and give other people confidence. So at some point, you have to just sit and weigh your options and decide, you know, what can I let go of for all the right reasons? And it might take a tick more work at the start, but if you're a great manager of people, if you give feedback in the moment, if you, don't take something back and then, fix it yourself, if you share the feedback, you will grow those people to, essentially, operate the way that you operate and the way that you want your business to operate. So I think it's just about really trying to recognize those opportunities and where you can leverage other people who are eager to, do the work and be a part of a team and collaborate, so that you're not doing that. Like, perfect example, I've had this project on my plate. It's literally all over my studio right now. I need to photograph a ton of packaging inspiration and put it into an AI doc to send to a manufacturer. It's been sitting here for 2 days. All I need to do is text someone to come over and do it. But I think I can do it myself, even though my calendar's booked from 9 o'clock until 5:30. So it's just, really trying to be strategic in where you spend your time and on the right tasks, and handing off the things that, somebody else could do. I will say, somebody gave me great advice, and I started this about a year ago, because I wasn't ready to hire a operations assistant, or, what's it called? Oh, a VA. They said, write down all the tasks that you think you could give to someone else if and when you have that someone else. And it's so funny, this is my task list, and now these are all my people. So as I have those tasks, I have slowly but surely divided them up. So I have a sketch artist that works on every one of my clients. I have a tech person that works on every one of my clients. But I have specific designers that stick to specific clients. And then I have my content and marketing person, and I have my executive operations person. And it's just I'm starting to create my own little org chart. And even though they're just part-time, it's slowly but surely getting those tasks off your plate and managing those people. I will say, I just do that in my head on paper, daily, weekly to-dos. But I just started using Asana, that helps me with my CRM and also helps me with tasks, so that I can start passing that off to people. Because through that software, or any software, you can task something to someone else and they receive that task. They can, say when that task is completed. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of, lean into this lightly, or start this process, or really dive into it. Trying to see what this question is.
She says, I know it's hard to define, but can you ballpark what part-time, money or salary would be for these contract employees that you hire? I know location and experience is key, but widespread.
Everybody's different, and it really just depends on what they're doing. So I'll say just generally, I have probably about 10 to 15 subcontractors that I use, and their hourly rates range from 25 an hour to 155 an hour. So it really just depends on how much value are they adding. So like a sketch artist, I'd probably pay between 25 and 35 an hour. They're just executing sketches, but that's like such an important piece of the start of the process. Like you can't really do any of this process without all of them. And then some of the higher hourly costs are more for like sourcing services or senior techs or like a senior designer or a senior print designer, things of that nature. So I would say the bulk of my subcontractors fall more between that like 45 to 55 an hour is like the average, I would say. I hope that answers the question.
Since we're talking about money, I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about what you charge and your pricing models, or if you do anything with retainer structures?
Yep. So I will say this has evolved immensely over the last 3 years. So I started offering, either an hourly or project-based, which I actually did for a long time. And again, it really just depends on the client. Like I was a supplemental designer for a company, and, they wanted to do hourly, and I would just submit my hours, every 2 weeks. But when I work with actual clients that I'm, delivering product for, designing product for, I typically will give them a quote and a time frame. So most of my clients are either startups, which is a 7 to 12 month commitment with my team, or they are, already running a business, but they want a new sourcing strategy, or they want to, source product with, 2 more vendors or things of this nature, which again is about a 7+ month commitment. Those I definitely do retainer. And I will say the majority of my clients right now are either project-based or retainer. So if I do project-based, like for example, I've been doing a couple small projects for a client, building a color palette or helping them build their print library. So, X amount of prints equals X amount of project dollars. And, that's due upon receipt, or put 50 down and 50 due on receipt. But most of my clients are retainer because it's a longer relationship because of the services that I offer, because it's end-to-end product development. It just takes a lot longer. Obviously, if you're just doing tech packs, and this is actually one of the questions, so I'll just pop into this, like pricing tech packs, there's no right or wrong answer. My first answer would be ask more questions. The thing that you don't want to do is say, yep, my tech packs cost $500. And then you get like an outerwear piece that has a huge size range and tons of pockets. And, like I always say, and I generalize it just so people can hear a number and understand what we're looking at. I always say for like a basic graphic t-shirt, like a full tech pack, $600. That's my opening price point. But it can go up to $1,200 or $1,500 if we're working with outerwear. So it's almost like bottom of the barrel, cream of the crop. And then once you get more information, that's when you can give them an actual quote. And I always say to them, sometimes the amount of information and what you already have will affect the price of your tech pack. So for example, if I am developing a new sourcing strategy for a client, do you have graded worksheets for all your measurements from your current manufacturer? Like if they have that and they like their fit and they're happy with it, that's something I can literally just put into my software and I don't have to hire a tech designer. If they're developing their fit, if they need actual specs, that's a whole hell of a different process. I mean, that could be, 10 or 15 hours for a tech designer, depending on how granular that client wants to get. Because, the tech designer I work with, she is like, okay, who are your competitor brands? Who do you look to aspirationally? What are your types of fabrics? Like, I need to see how much stretch and recovery. Do you have a grade in mind? Like, who's your target client? Is it, like a ASTM, like American Standard, or are you gearing towards a plus client, or are you gearing towards, a small cup size bra client? Like all of those things are characteristics that will help you have a more accurate quote on a tech pack. And then of course, just asking more questions around, I always say to a client, the speed of the completion depends on the ability for you to provide the right level of information. And so I have like a tech pack intake form where you can say like, and you got to spell it out for some of them, fabric A, fabric B, fabric C, trims, zippers, all of the things. Do you use a poly bag? Like, do you already have labels and artwork for those that need to go into the tech pack? And then I think the last thing is more, do they need a scrappy tech pack, or do they need like a real detailed, like you want actual artwork for every piece and part, or are you just doing development and like a photo of a similar, label might do for this development tech pack? So my answer would always be ask more questions.
All right, staying on this topic a little bit, there's a question from before and a question in the chat that are kind of similar. So how do you showcase your services, and do you recommend putting like a ballpark or starting at prices with those services?
I don't think it hurts to do like a starting at. So let me see. How do I want to answer this? Ask me that question one more time.
Okay.
I can. Do you want me to ask it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been working on putting, like, kind of restructuring the pricing and my services on my website, and
Okay.
as I'm creating all of it, I'm getting stuck on what to show for pricing, because the price depends on each project, and just like you said. So
Yep.
I'm wondering if it would be not really help me, or if it really would help to have just like starting at, or just some type of ballpark to give people some type of idea, because I know that there's so many people out there that think a tech pack should be like $50, and like it just sets that bar for like how much work it really is, and like where it would be.
Yep. I think starting at is a safe way to give some exposure to where your pricing starts, but to also avoid, having to lock into a price without knowing more. So, I mean, I call that boilerplate pricing. I personally don't put that on my website, right, wrong, or indifferent. But I do in a discovery call. So in a sales call process, if I have a client that's doing like end-to-end product development, I actually have boilerplate pricing that I bring up and I show and I explain the process, the scope of work, and the starting at price. So the way that I show that is, most of my clients are doing collections. And so I usually show them, and I start at the most expensive. So I start with, okay, if you're going to do a 5-piece collection, this is going to start at $50,000. If you're going to do a 3-piece collection, this is going to start at $25,000. If you only want to do one piece, which I highly don't recommend for any brand trying to launch anything credible, it's like, $8,000 to $10,000. Now that includes the whole end-to-end development process. And then obviously there's cases where I've got clients that want to do, 5 apparel pieces, but then they want to do some accessories, and then they want to add leather goods. So, from there, you just keep adding. But one thing I make very clear, and I've learned this from hiring other people for services and feeling like, ooh, I really like how that feels. I put scope of work and deliverables for everything. So here's what I'm going to do for you, and here's what I'm going to give to you. So a scope of work may not always have a deliverable, but typically it does if you're designing something or if you're creating a tech pack. And so I always try and, make them feel really encouraging with the fact that they have something to show for what they're paying for. So that could be, a tech pack PDF. That could be, if you're kind of starting from beginning, that could be a trend, like a mood board, a color palette. That could be, your collection line sheet, any of those deliverables. And then anybody that I'm doing end-to-end product development, if it's just like a one-hit deal, the deliverable is they get all their samples and their strike-offs back. If it's a repeat client, you can kind of see the conglomerate of samples, but I tend to kind of keep that, because if we're going to continue doing, multiple seasons, I need to have like where we've come from to be able to direct where we're going. But I hope that helps to kind of answer that a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. Well, just to clarify, you give that information in the discovery call or in like a email? I'm assuming it's more of a conversation.
So I bring up a document that I created that explains the process. So I'm actually trying to, I call it my 4-step process. I'm gonna actually, I don't know if I can share, but I'm gonna bring it up so I can just walk through it myself.
You should be able to
and
share.
I actually developed some, let me see, hold on. Let me pull it up and see if I can share it.
While Amanda's doing that, can I get some comments in the chat? Do you guys want to talk about what her most popular services are? How to deal with clients that expect more than they're willing to pay? Hear more about how she got started? Which topics do you want to hear about next? Because since we're running low on time. The options were, what are her most popular services? How do you deal with clients who expect more than they're willing to pay? And how she started her consulting agency.
I like the services one.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can make this bigger.
All right, seems like the chat is voting clients who expect more, so we'll hit that after this, and then if we have time,
Yep.
we'll go back to services.
Okay, so this is actually something, I don't share this in a discovery call. This is actually part of the client journey. Like if I'm gonna move from a discovery call to, and I'll show my boilerplate pricing in that call, then I move to a custom quote. And I always send, this is what I call my capabilities deck. And I always send this with the quote. So it's kind of my way of showing my credibility, who I am as a brand, what my company's about when I'm, delivering a quote. So I switch this up, this is kind of everything. This is kids, women's and men's, but I can, swap out these photos to create it for anybody. So we have like who we are. So these are our core values. And then this is how I show the process of how we do end-to-end product development. And in my discovery call, I actually put numbers to this. So that's how I kind of present in a discovery call. But something I've learned is this used to be all just like a list of words, and it's really overwhelming for a new client to see that. And so I've kind of started developing these, just little brand icons that really help to kind of explain and educate all the process that goes into what I'm going to provide for them. So, and then I show, some of my work, referrals, like any testimonials that I have, so that they know kind of what to expect. And then a little bit about me, all my contact info, and, hopefully we get started. So I hope that kind of helps. Now I don't know how to stop sharing.
There should be something at the top of the screen that says stop, maybe. There you go.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, so then the next question that was voted to focus on was dealing with clients who have higher expectations than what they're willing to pay for.
Okay, so one thing that a really great advice that I was given, and actually used this tactic recently. So I had a client and they wanted, A, B, and C services. I told them what it cost, and they came back and said, I have this budget. Instead of saying, okay, like I'll just do it for that, I basically said, well, that's no problem at all. I totally respect the fact that you're budget conscious, but I quoted you for 3 services, and for that budget, you can get 1 service. Which one would you prefer to proceed with at this point? So, I know that's hard to do. And, when I was just starting out, I will say I did not do that. Just took whatever I could get. But once you're to a point where you feel more comfortable doing that, I just think, it's not selling yourself short. And if you can uphold, quality work, that person's going to come back to you for those other 2 services. And, I think another hard pill for me to swallow is not everybody can afford you, and not everybody is at a place where they're ready to work for you or work with you. So, like a great example of that is I actually have I have my little client board over here on this little dry erase. So on the left-hand side are all my current clients, and on the right-hand side are my clients on deck. So those are people that I had a discovery call with, and, they just aren't ready to work with me. I could see it in their face when I showed them the boilerplate pricing. They kind of started fumbling over their words. They wanted to think about it. Like you just start to develop an intuition for people who aren't ready to work with you. And, I think with those kind of people, I just give them an escape route. And I say, if this doesn't feel comfortable for you, maybe it's not the right time. And perhaps we should do a follow-up call in the next, what feels comfortable? Is it 3 weeks, 3 months, or, beginning of next year? And you might be in a better place. And the thing that I always send them to is I say, I put a lot of educational content on my social media. Use my free content, dive into all the stuff I give away for free. I do 2 blogs a month. I, post 4 times a week on LinkedIn. Like, learn as much as you can until you're ready to work with me. And that basically gives them an escape route because they know they're not ready, but it also kind of keeps them connected with you. And then over that time, they're going to build trust with you. They're going to respect what you do because of the content that you're putting out, and they're hopefully learning from you. And then I will say the other thing that I have discovered that I'm actually currently working on for my business right now is, what can I give those clients? So is there a digital product, or is there some sort of educational tool or piece? I'm in the middle of writing a course for, clients that are launching a business that maybe aren't ready to work with me, like here's a little blueprint of what to expect so that it kind of prepares them. And again, even though they're not going to work with me, they'll buy my lower priced digital course and it'll build my credibility. Hopefully they learn a ton and they'll have more confidence and they'll be up to speed as far as education when they actually come to me to work. So I would, it's hard not to sell yourself short, but have confidence in your craft and what you bring to the table and the value that you add. I will say, also know your audience. I actually, for a while, fluctuated my rate depending on who I was talking to. And I think that's okay as long as you're not giving away your time for free. If you're working with a corporate company that just needs to, hire somebody for design while they have somebody gone on maternity leave for 3 months and they have an X amount of budget, like feel free to say, here's my rate. If it's not meeting what you can afford, what's your budget? Like how can we meet in the middle? So I do think it's okay to slightly fluctuate as long as you're not giving your time away and you're still being profitable. Sometimes it's actually what you need to get your foot in the door. I have learned that. I've figured out ways to work with people, just more creatively. Now, because I, produce product for people, I also have the opportunity, I charge on the service side to design their product, but then we're providing the actual goods. So I have an opportunity to then, because I have a master negotiator, to then get a little bump on the product side as well. And so I have a little bit of flexibility where if I lower my rate for the service, I can still make what I need to and tag on 20 cents, $1, whatever it is on the product side per piece in order to supplement and get paid for the time that I'm committed. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can navigate it, but, try not to sell out because that's just a bummer. And I have to say when I have actually, encountered freelancers that like subcontract for me and I'll say, what's your rate? And they say, well, it's this, but I'd be willing to work for, and I'm like, then why wouldn't I ask you for the lower rate? It just, I don't know, it kind of sits with me in a negative connotation because they are devaluing themselves before we even have further conversations. So I would be really confident in your rate and say, whatever, other clients haven't really had an issue with that, but if you really want to work together, maybe we can think of some creative ways to problem solve, and that's cutting out scope of work to get to making sure that you're covered for your time.
All right. Oops, sorry. I was still on mute for a second. Let's talk about quickly what are your most popular services, and then if we can keep that short, we'll just answer questions from the people that are still here, if anyone has anything.
So I would say my most popular service is end-to-end product development. It's launch clients. So out of 10 clients, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So half of those are from scratch launch clients. And so, that's like probably the most holistic services that I can offer. And that starts from, ideation to, sketches and designing and all the way to product development, sourcing, and delivering product to their door. So I find that's kind of my superpower because I hire people that are experts at each of those points in the process. I think that's what sets me apart, and the fact that I actually deliver on what I say I'm going to deliver. There are a lot of people that I encounter that have been burned, by a factory, or they didn't know they needed to sign a contract to protect themselves. Just, I think for me, it's all around my my authenticity and transparency to make sure that my clients feel very like trusted and taken care of, because this is a scary journey for most clients. They're either bootstrapping or have an investor. It's, you're spending a lot of money and putting in a lot of time to develop as a launch client. So that's definitely, I think, probably my best service package that I have available.
I have two questions. What was your most popular service when you first started out? And I know you said that you were working with a big corporate client, so maybe those smaller clients. And then my second question is, have you ever had a situation where you've hired a contractor and they didn't deliver, and what was your recourse?
Great questions. So I would say, actually, I've been doing end-to-end product development since the beginning. So even my corporate client, they were an established brand, but they wanted to launch like a new offshoot. Like they've been doing kids, and they've been doing women's, and they've been doing accessories and shoes for a really long time, but they wanted to launch a kids brand. And honestly, that's kind of like, they were a startup, but they just had like corporate funding. And so, the fact that they could have a one-stop shop versus having to hire a whole freelance team or having to hire a full head count. So I feel like the end-to-end product development has really been my bread and butter from the beginning. I've now just figured out better ways to be more efficient with it and to kind of officially niche down to that. And then what was your second question?
Have you ever had a contractor who you hired that didn't deliver, and like, what did you do?
So I will say I have had, a few of those situations. They haven't been like too dramatic, because most of the people that I've hired, with the exception of maybe one or two newer people, I've worked with for 3 to 15 years. So most of my subcontractors are a lot of former justice people, or, through networking, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And so these people that I work with are, I've known them for a while, so they're very trusted. But I would say I did have an individual that was just very lackadaisical, like didn't want to meet a deadline. Oh, I forgot that. I'm so sorry, And honestly, I just stopped calling them, because I knew their heart wasn't in it, and I knew that they had other interests artistically. But if it's somebody that, you kind of have to figure out, like, where did that issue come from? Where's the root of the issue? Where's the disconnect? Because there's people problems, but then there's also like, did I give enough direction, kind of a thing. So making sure that you're not expecting people to read your mind. You're very open and honest about your expectations, your deadlines, things of that nature. And I just think, sharing feedback in the moment and giving somebody the opportunity to improve or to, learn from that feedback to move forward. But I think it just depends on your situation and identifying, like, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? Is there anything I could have done differently to have a different result? And kind of starting there, it's like that whole like benefit of the doubt kind of thing. But yeah, I would say that's my thought.
Does anybody have any questions for Amanda? I have one more question. Okay. Jacqueline, why don't you go first?
I feel a little bit embarrassed to ask this, but I'm just gonna go for it.
Go for it.
So you mentioned a 5-piece collection for a client would be around 50,000. Is that because you've been able to really narrow down what certain manufacturers are going to cost, and that's kind of where the ballpark is for the niche and where you're sourcing, or like that, because that was that for the end-to-end service, like
It is, but that's just for the service side, so that doesn't include cost of goods.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I essentially do the service side of the contract. So it's end-to-end product development from idea to completion of product idea. So like approvals. So I get it to a place where it can go into production. And then my clients will actually sign a separate contract with my sourcing partner for the product purchase. And then they'll pass a PO. We do all, so in my service side, the actual sourcing of the product, the work to communicate and negotiate costing and get all the product finished is on the service side. And then they have to pay for the cost of goods. So whenever I do those boilerplate pricing quotes, there's always a massive asterisk at the bottom that says does not include cost of goods or shipping. So, you have to think about not only the cost of goods, but the taxes and the importing and the shipping and forwarding and trucking, like all of those things, which Meghna, thank God, deals with all of that. And she does a costing chart, that has all of that configured in for their landed price. But yeah, that's just for the service side.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you, sorry, super quickly, have you gotten pushback on that? Or like, because I know you said some people are like, they're like, eyes bug out and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect it to be that much. Like, have you gotten pushback on that, and or have you kind of settled into like, no, that is like a really good, reasonable price for that?
I would say it's a pretty good settled in price. And I will say that's just on trial and error. So the first time I did that, I priced it at $20,000 and I ran out of money and I didn't pay myself for the last, couple of months of the project. So it's really based on trial and error and the fact that I have so many subcontractors. So if it's too high for a client, I'll start picking apart the scope of work and saying, okay, we can take some of these things out if you want, but ultimately there's nothing that they can take out because it's the holistic process. I will say the only time that I'll not discount, but alter that boilerplate pricing is if they've already worked with another freelancer. So I have 2 clients like that right now, and they actually came to me with, the design of the product, a little bit of color, just kind of like bare bones tech packs. So I was able to give a slightly lower cost because some of that work had already been completed. However, I will say ask questions, because sometimes like I work in Illustrator for all of my technical sketching. Like that's just a non-negotiable for me. And this, like somebody else did it in Photoshop. And I was like, I needed an Illustrator to be able to color things up. And she's like, I colored it in Photoshop. So I ended actually having to resketch everything. So like ask tons of questions. But I would say that's kind of, I won't go lower than that because I know I won't make any money. And I'm an agency, right? So it's going to be different if you're an independent designer. My pricing is based on agency pricing, which I've also learned because I'm the last one that I pay in my business. When you're kind of running an agency and when you're managing all the people to give this service, you gotta get paid. So even though I'm not doing anything, I have to pay myself. I'm the people person and the visionary and the process person and the client touch points. So usually, depending on where you're at in your business, I would say, and depending on the type of client you're working with, anywhere from like 20 to 35% like margin. So, if I can't make that, it's not worth it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not worth all the work I do to coordinate my team, and because even though they're the doers of the work, I'm
you
reviewing
still have to
every
present.
single piece and part. Yeah. So I am working on the project, but it's more of a like managing the process, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I heard the prices and I was like, wow, I gotta raise my prices, but I have to remember that like you have an agency and I'm a one-woman show right now, so the prices are gonna be different.
And I will say those prices include technical sketches, full design work, um, you know, graphic design, print design. I mean, everything is done for them. I also have a designer who is specific to labels and hang tags. So we'll design all of the labels and hang tags, down to the poly bag, everything. So it's sourcing also, like the sourcing process is in that as well, which is a huge cost. I mean, sourcing takes a lot of time and a lot of conversations with manufacturers. So depending on if that's part of what you're offering or not, that will fluctuate, significantly.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Amanda, do you have time for one more question?
I sure do.
All right, Fernanda, do you want to ask her question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the insight. Like actually hearing your top service, that the end-to-end development, like that resonated with me because it's actually what this potential client like it's kind of asking me.
Okay.
So I do have the experience, but I am not experienced as a freelancer, let's say, and I would probably more like in the Jacqueline side, like in the like a one-man show, one-woman show actually. And my question is kind of like a two-part thing. Like I asked on the chat, like how do you track your hours and how do you submit it to your client? Is that something that you agree? But also you were mentioning, and when you were talking about the subcontractors, like how do you keep yourself on check and know more about like how do you actually do your own feedback, like your own assessment on like, okay, am I doing things on the right, on not, well, maybe not in the right way, but like the way that I really want to do it, and how do I communicate that to others?
Yeah, so it's all a process, and I don't know that there's ever a perfect way. It's just you continue to learn and apply things. I will say, I have just now in year 3 started doing really detailed analytics and KPIs. So I know how to price myself only based on how I didn't do it well from the last client, and then I adjust, which is, which you're learning and you're growing and you're shifting, but I need some hard analytics. So one thing that I've been doing in my business, which I'm going to actually evaluate like the end of next week, end of month, is I create, my new assistant creates Excel charts for every one of my clients. And it's what did I give my client as a quote, and how many freelancers did I have to pay out for this project, and what is my ROI? So what am I making on this project? And then when I do that for every single client that I have, it gives me a really great landscape and assessment on which clients I'm getting the best ROI. So for example, I say end-to-end clients are my best clients, but they're actually my highest revenue, but they may not be my highest profitability. So right. That's what I am currently evaluating in my business, because I don't want to have $1 million business and take home $200,000. I want to have a, $1 million business that I take home $500,000.
100%. Yeah.
So, it takes time to understand which of your services are going to have the biggest ROI. And the coolest thing that I'm kind of in a self-discovery phase right now is, yes, looking at best ROI, but what are the things that I love to do? So like, I can totally nerd out on a tech pack, but it will take me hours to do a tech pack because I get really anal and obsessive compulsive. I'm not the best person, and it is not worth my time to like nerd out on tech packs right now. Setting the tone for client work is my jam. I love developing color palettes. I love researching trends. I love putting together mood boards. Like, that's what I love to do, or even designing a collection. But anything else, like, I am not a great sketch artist because I haven't done it for so many years. And I have so many other people that are far more talented in that skill than I am. So it's really, it's kind of a nice harmonious balance between what feeds my soul, like what do I love to do? What am I going to be excited to sit down and do every Monday morning versus, oh God, I got to do those tech packs tomorrow. I've got like the Sunday, like bubble guts,
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice balance. And that's one of the biggest learnings that I've had over the last 3 years. I may not be making what I made in corporate, but I am for sure driven by my passion and excited about working with my clients and being able to work with other people and have subcontractors and collaborate and be creative. And I think over time, if your drive and your passion is in the right direction, the revenue will come. And I hated that phrase 2 years ago and 3 years ago, but now I'm living it. And if I'm making decisions on my core values, those things will come. Like, the worst thing you can do is stop. And as long as you keep going, it can only get better.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I don't want to keep you any longer, so I'm going to call it.
Awesome.
Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. This was so helpful. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I know last
Awesome.
time you said you were open to conversation, so are you okay again if I share your info out to everyone?
Absolutely. And I'll say what I say to all my clients and everyone, like, I put out a blog twice a month. Check out my LinkedIn. I am going to be launching a course, and it's essentially, how you launch a fashion brand. If anybody's interested in being a beta for that course, send me a message. I'm going to probably start collecting betas in the next few weeks. But yeah, reach out via email, LinkedIn, if you have more questions. I'm here for all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Have an amazing holiday weekend.